we got our first look at Japan. We saw Curaçao make history. We saw a dark horse fall to a fantastic team. We have a lot to talk about, guys. Hello. Welcome to day 4 of the World Cup Daily Recap from Rabona TV. Appreciate you coming by. I'm Adrian. We do this every single day that there are matches, so be sure to subscribe if you're new around here so we can see you around more often. Curaçao taking on Germany in a historic match for the Caribbean nation, a little bit beyond analyzing in the end. When you're seeing a score like this, a score that Germany is familiar with, as they have done this before at a World Cup, haven't they? Curaçao, they're just like Brazil, you know? They're just the same. When you put it like that, that Germany-Brazil game just gets even crazier. They did this to Brazil. Anyway, the big story of this match wasn't that Germany was able to beat up on Curaçao, it's that Curaçao, playing in their first ever match in the World Cup against a giant like Germany, was able to score a goal. The smallest nation to ever qualify, with a little bit over 100,000 for their population, scored in their first match. The man who will go down in history is Livano Comenencia. Last year, he moved to FC Zurich from Juventus Next Gen, their academy team. He can forever claim that he scored against Germany in the World Cup with Manuel Neuer in goal. The rest of the story, who needs to hear it, right? Kidding, of course, but for a moment at 1-1, it looked like, oh my god, could we be in for a magical fairy tale upset? But then Germany began scoring goal after goal after goal. The ruthlessness of the Germans came out. Havertz with 2, Nemetcha, Schlotterbeck, Musiala with a nice one, Nathan Brown, Deniz Undav. Undav had a goal and 2 assists as he came on as a sub. It's not Nathan Brown, it's Nathaniel Brown, my bad. He looked good out there though, as he has played his way into this German side in the last few months. He also had an assist with his goal, and yeah, I mean, like I said, there's not a lot to analyze with a match like this, where one opponent just completely outclassed the other. Nagelsmann spoke after the match, saying that this match put them in a better place than before the match, as they showed the nation, they showed Germany that they can perform. Ecuador versus Ivory Coast was the second match from Group E on the day, and man, was it ever entertaining. It was far, far more open than anyone would have assumed, given, well, Ecuador was involved, a team that conceded just 0.28 goals per game in qualifying, and also averaged less than a goal per game scored. Not a lot of goals happened in their matches. Ivory Coast had a lovely record in qualifying as well. They didn't concede a single goal. They scored a lot more though, and they have some nice attackers. Ecuador, that's obviously their weaker area of the pitch, as they have a stunning back line, a great midfield. Ivory Coast have a nice attack with the likes of Pepe when he's in form, Eli Wahi, who had a nice season with Nice, and of course the prize, Yan Diomande. Fantastic, unbelievable performance. Ecuador didn't have a single player from the Ecuador top flight in their starting 11, which was a record for them in this World Cup, in the World Cup, I should say. And with all of this talk about attacking, it was actually Ecuador who were the more dangerous team in the first half. Sure, Diomande was causing issues throughout this game, but Ecuador had the closer calls. Yeboah hit the crossbar in the 22nd minute. Then Minda, the other wide man, hit the bar in the 30th minute. They looked like they were just a little bit of luck away from scoring, keeping the ball in Ivory Coast half for a lot of that first half. Everything changed after halftime, however. It was all opposite and upside down, with Ivory Coast looking the more likely to score in the early exchanges, hitting the bar themselves as well. Then things evened out a bit after Fofana was forced to palm a hard strike away. That was actually technically Ecuador's only shot on target in this match. At the end, the only team that could convert on their pressure was Ivory Coast, and you can't say the goal wasn't deserved. A quick transition through Wilfred Singo, who performed pretty well, who just moments earlier actually had sunned Preciado in a shoulder-to-shoulder, but he broke forward before squaring to Amad Diallo, who didn't start this match, but his strike with his instep swerved out of reach and into the corner. Absolute dagger for Ecuador, who, as I said in the preview to the groups, they struggle for goals no matter how much their supporters are si se puede-ing in the crowd. And that's why I had Ivory Coast ahead of Ecuador in the standings. Still 2 matches to play, but that was a huge result for the Ivory Coast, ending Ecuador's 19-match unbeaten run, 12 years since the Ivory Coast last won at the World Cup, and that puts them just behind Germany in the standings for now. But man, Yan Diomande, at 19. Just absolutely unbelievable. Like, beyond just beating people on the dribble, key passes as well. All right, over to Group F, and this was fun. This was fun, man. It was a really fun match, maybe the most entertaining so far, maybe. Yes, of course, the United States were fantastic to watch, but as far as an even contest with some back and forth drama, this was the one. The Dutch looked decent for some spells in the first half, and Japan seemed content to sit in a little bit of a lower block than I expected at times. I thought they would press the Dutch more, but a common sight was the Japanese sort of sitting back while the Dutch were passing the ball around their back line between Van Dijk, Van Hecke, etc. But at least in the first half, the Dutch were looking to score. In the first 70 minutes or so, they were looking to play football. And then Koeman lost me again. He did some okay things with the Dutch in his first stint as manager, but he has been pretty poor at times in this second stint. I thought he did okay actually at Euro 2024. I didn't mind them at Euro 2024. I mean, they were almost in the final, but this was a bad start to this tournament. But Japan, they weren't necessarily great either early on. As mentioned, playing more defensively than I would have liked to have seen. I feel for Moriyasu for losing Mitoma, Minamino, and Endo, the latter, at the last minute. So there are some reasons to give them a bit of a break. And again, first matches, you can't draw too many conclusions, but as far as action goes, Zion Suzuki had to make a couple of decent saves in the first half, but the Dutch got their breakthrough from a cross into the box that Virgil van Dijk headed in off of the post. The man you want getting his head onto a cross, right? Inch perfect finish from him as he watched it all the way. Shortly after, though, great goal from Nakamura, jinking a little bit before hitting a strike low to the near corner. Always a difficult one for Verbruggen with the way the defenders were blocking him. Nice cutback from Kubo to Nakamura right before that. Level standing didn't last too long, however, as Crescencio Somerville, who was actually surprised that he even got a call-up to the national team, he started this match as well. He cut inside from the right flank, and then similarly to Van Dijk, he banked the ball in off of the post. Pretty unsavable for Suzuki on both occasions, really. Just two really difficult, nice attempts from the Dutch. Nice goal from Somerville, as Van Dijk's was as well. And then, as I was just talking about, Koeman just shut down. They were playing a sort of hybrid back four, back five throughout the match, but he went to a hard back five after they took the lead and just tried to absorb pressure and hang on to that result instead of continuing to show any kind of threat going forward. There was nothing from the Dutch after that, which was a big mistake in my opinion from Koeman. And Japan's equalizer wasn't really a surprise, right? A ball in and Ogawa headed it in off of Kamada. I believe that was the final ruling, and passed Verbruggen for 2-2. Huge result from what most consider the top two teams in Group F, but this Netherlands team has shown that they are get-atable. Tunisia, Sweden, they will be looking at this result and will be a little bit more enthused, bolstered a little bit by it. And hey, speaking of Tunisia and Sweden, Dan?
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, this was another match that I had expectations going into, and those expectations were not met. And in a good way. This was a fun one, especially if you were a Swedish fan, because they went on to win it going away. Tunisia has been a defensively solid team. That's really what they're all about. They work to frustrate their opponents, while Sweden, in recent games, even really all through qualifying, have been pretty underwhelming. But it was Tunisia who really struggled out of the gate, and Sweden made them pay. And it started with a beautiful goal and a story that could only really happen at the World Cup. A ball gets played over the top for Alexander Isak from the ageless. I just don't know how Victor Lindelof is still only 31 years old. It feels like he's been around forever. Anyways, he plays a great ball over the top for Isak. He doesn't score, but chaos ensues. Eventually, it falls to Yassine Ayari, who scores an absolute belter from outside of the box, and it's 1-0 Sweden. But the cool part is Ayari doesn't celebrate, and there's a brief moment of why isn't he celebrating, and then we realize he's born to Tunisian and Moroccan parents, and the non-celebration is an honor to his Tunisian heritage. Very classy stuff. Sweden was just getting started there. 23 minutes later, Isak does get his goal, comes in off the left flank, cuts it to his right, and goes into the far post with a low shot that probably should have been saved by the Tunisian keeper, Shamak, but he had a really tough go on this night, and it made things even easier for Sweden. Now, Tunisia would get one back just before the halftime break, but that was the only joy and the only hope they had in this match. Into the second half, 3 more goals come for the Swedes, and it's capped off with another worldie from Yassine Ayari at the end of the match, just before the final whistle. He absolutely belts another one from outside the area into the far corner, and he is off to a great start. Maybe one of the unexpected breakout stars of the tournament, the 22-year-old plying his trade with Brighton in the Premier League. Aside from that, Viktor Gyökeres got on the scoreboard, and Svanberg scored as well off a set piece. It was like 18 seconds after he came onto the pitch. So it was all a party for the Swedish team, who's probably going to live off of this goal difference in the first match. We know it's a tough group they're in. They're going to need this goal difference. And this big win, I wouldn't say guarantees them a spot no matter what moving forward into the round of 32, but it certainly gives them a really good chance of moving into the knockout phase, even if they do happen to lose their next 2 matches. The other big takeaway is Alexander Isak coming off a frustrating year with Liverpool, a goal and 2 assists, so he's putting that behind him, and Gyökeres scores a goal, also adds an assist. This strike partnership, about as good as there is in the entire tournament. They're off to a good start. It gives Sweden hope that they can maybe have a nice little run here at this World Cup. Back to you, Adrian.
Dan, thank you as always for taking the late kickoffs. We appreciate you, man. We give the people the coverage for every single match. Thanks to you. All right, guys, thank you as always for joining me. Head over to the 90th minute to take in their daily show with Dan to get you ready for the day's matches. Other than that, see you here at the same time and same place tomorrow. Subscribe if you're new. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. See you then, guys.